At a starry affair Monday night, the Museum of Fine Arts opened a new show presenting the original Hollywood style with gowns worn by Mae West, Gloria Swanson, Carole Lombard, and a host of other leading ladies. WGBH News arts editor Jared Bowen has this glimpse.
Hollywood Glamour at the Museum of Fine Arts takes a satiny stroll through the golden age of film, the 1930s and 40s, when actresses were statuesque goddesses, even though these gowns reveal most were pretty petite. Joan Crawford, Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich. They played the part both on screen and off, draped in haute couture gowns and dripping with gems and jewels. They were swans gliding across otherworldly ponds. Mere mortals could only glimpse them in magazines and movies. Coming out of the Depression, the show's curators say this glamour was about the only luxury the average person could lavish on themselves. Here, in a delirious blend of jewelry and gowns worn by the most famous figures, Hollywood's golden age has a starring role once again.
I love this stuff. Take us on a little tour through this. What else have we got?
Well, as you may have gleaned from that piece, it's just a very small gallery with these with a very, very big punch. So you see a number of gowns, which we should be seeing in our video in just a second. And here's a gown, probably my favorite, actually, worn by Betty Grable in the 1937 film This Way Please, designed by Edith Head, who, of course, is probably one of the most famous costume designers and designers, period, ever in history. This is another favorite. This is Marlene Dietrich wearing this gown for Desire in 1936. It was really designed for the light so that it would just sheer through and show off her figure. And this is a Mae West gown. Of course, she wanted everything to accentuate her body, including the embroidery here, which just followed the line of her body.
She looked smaller there than, I always think of her as kind of big.
This is how small she was. She was 5 feet tall. She had to design these platform shoes so that she could be lifted up so she looked tall and statuesque, and that just that tiny little bottom of the shoe would peek out from beneath her dress. That was her trick to appearing tall in the movies. It's great. So you'll see those platform shoes there as well.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, let's bring Jill Radsken into the conversation. She's a style correspondent for the Boston Globe and sits on the nominating committee for America's Fashion Awards. So you're fashion experts. Tell us about some of the origins of these gowns.
You know, the provenance of them is just so incredibly interesting. What's amazing is that we think of today's movies and how carefully constructed they are, and that the studios and the directors have so much say in all these little details. And it was like that back in the 30s and 40s. I mean, every gown, from the pale shades to the gold thread to the way the light hit them, and every little detail was thought about by these directors and these studios. And these women had personas that they were playing. You know, Mae West was very feminine. Greta Garbo had to bring the masculine elements to her outfits. So these garments are really not only showcasing their personalities, but then were really the lifeline for people into the whole country. And that was how, you know, people went to the movies and they got Vogue, and that was how they dressed.
Sure, because they didn't know otherwise.
Exactly. It was influencing the country.
Yeah.
The curators, too, told me that they took, the designers, like Edith Head, took this very European style, but made it California, because they had to manufacture clothes that would be good for the camera, that would, as Jill was just mentioning, capture the light. They even, in that first Betty Grable dress I mentioned, they used lame because it didn't rustle for the microphones. So they really adapted the style, so it became very singular and very much its own here in America.
So you're kind of an expert on Edith Head, too. Give us a little history of her.
I mean, you know, she is one of my favorites and one of the leading costume designers. You know, in her heyday, I think, you know, everyone looked to her sort of to adapt Parisian styles and really amp them up. And that's, you know, what American fashion is great at doing. And she was able to really translate French and, you know, trends and really put them on movie stars and give them just this sensual sexiness. And, you know, these women were goddesses.
So all the movie houses used her?
Many of the movie houses. There's also Travis Banton, who is also a tremendous talent, and he did Carole Lombard and some other famous actresses. And, you know, to the point of the show, which is, it's only 16 gowns, but the design of the room really kind of amps up just how stylized the time was, because when you walk in, there's these dripping chandeliers, and the room is very dark with these small spotlights on the dresses, and the stage is set like a grand staircase. I mean, you feel like you're in Gone with the Wind.
This is all 1930s.
30s and 40s. You know, it was just at the beginning of talking movies.
So there's also a jewelry component.
There's a great, very glittering jewelry component, and we'll take you through that a little bit as well. This is a multi-use necklace. It was worn by June Knight, and it would break apart into bracelets, a dress clip, and it was made of platinum and diamonds. It was one of the curator's favorite pieces. We go back to Mae West here. This is her diamond bracelet. She once said, without diamonds, honey, I'd be underdressed. She loved them, and this is a Ginger Rogers suite. And this came in from a number of collections, including from Neil Lane, who's a big jewelry designer, loaned a lot of these pieces to the Museum of Fine Arts, because this was an era which style really started, and it became as much about what women were wearing on screen, again, to get people through the Depression in this period in America, and what they were wearing off screen. We always think that things are new and revolutionary, but these actresses were very mindful of the fact that they were creating personas off the screen as well, and often worked with designers like Edith Head to style themselves for being in magazines or just going out.
Well, I mean, it sounds kind of naive, but somebody must have had the foresight to know that these things would be precious decades later. So how did it come to be that it's part of a museum collection?
You know what's so interesting is that during this period, the jewelry was a lot of times the actress's own. It was only at the start of this period that jewelers, like Tiffany and some other houses, realized that they could be doing, what fashion designers were doing and bringing in their wares. And you'll see that these women, were just really dripping in them, as Jared said about Mae West. And the incredible thing is that Neil Lane is, he has several pieces in there. And it's incredible to see that they're very hard to find these pieces now. And I think, people
somebody had them in a collection. As I'm saying about the gowns, too. I mean, who had them?
A lot of them have surfaced. I mean, one of the great discoveries is one of the gowns in the show exists when the film no longer exists, because of course there are these great preservation efforts to save actual celluloid now. But one of the gowns in the show, and I don't have the exact one to show you, but it is the only element that remains from the film, because a lot of these pieces were archived, or they subsisted in costume departments, or stars just took them home because they were buying for themselves. Gloria Swanson was somebody who, even as a very young starlet, and it helps when you have benefactors like Joseph Kennedy helping buy your jewels for the relationship that they had. But she, as a very young starlet, began accumulating her jewels.
Yeah, I think he actually produced some of her films, and some of the dresses, the films didn't do that well, but I think you'll see some of the dresses in the show. The jewelry, I think in terms of the provenance of them, it comes in all different ways. I mean, Neil Lane told me a great story about how Mae West in her later years had fallen in love with one of her bodyguards, and they never got married, but he took care of her, and they were married in everything but name. And she died, and he felt a loyalty to her and put all of her jewels in a safety deposit box until he died. And then, a relative found them. So, decades ago, he was able to purchase them, and it's incredible because those are very infrequent these days to be able to find those kinds of gems.
Great. I'm going to get over there. All right, Jared, what do you got coming up tomorrow?
Tomorrow, the 1967 film, again, going back in time, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Love it. You probably don't remember it. Were you even born?
I love old films. It's just been adapted for the stage at the Huntington Theatre Company with Malcolm Jamal Warner, who you see there. He played Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show, and Julia Duffy, who played in Newhart, plays the mother. But of course, it's a story about the uber-liberal San Francisco parents who must deal with their daughter's interracial relationship, and how once the doors are closed, it's very, very different. So we'll have a whole conversation about what it means to have that discussion about race today.
How was the dinner scene? Was it as tense as it was in the movie?
I have to race off. I have to leave you now because I'm about to see it.
All right. Jared Bowen, as always, thank you so much for coming. Jill Radsken, thanks for your insight and all the passion. Appreciate it.